Hello everyone. So today we're going to talk about how to get started with Pixlr Editor, which is a great Photoshop alternative. So I'm just doing a Google search, opening up a new tab in Google Chrome and searching for Pixlr Editor. You spell Pixlr Pixlr, and when I click on it, I come to this screen, and on the left you have the basic version of Pixlr, and on the right you have a more professional version of Pixlr. So I'm going to use the more professional version just because it has more features. So clicking on Launch Pixlr, let's see. So you're going to see this screen right here. And to get started, I'm going to just choose one of these stock images. So I'm going to choose this image of the Golden Gate Bridge. And the great thing about Pixlr is you don't have to download it. It is a browser-based application. So that means that you can use it in your Chromebook. So it's a really great Photoshop alternative and, fairly user-friendly. So even if you haven't had any experience with Photoshop, this tutorial will cover some of the basics and you'll be able to get started with some image manipulation and digital drawing. Okay, so I have my image of the Golden Gate Bridge up, and you can see on the left I have my toolbar. Many of these tools are the same as the ones you find in Photoshop. On the right over here you see a layers palette. Layers palette is a little bit different of a user interface than the one in Photoshop, but very similar, and you'll be able to get the hang of it. It's not a problem here. Okay, so let's just go through the toolbar so that you can see what the different functions of each of these tools is. The one on the top left is the Move tool. So that just allows you to move any elements around. So let's see, if I unlock this and use the Move tool, you can see that I can move this image around. The rectangular marquee tool is the one to the right of the Move tool. You can draw rectangles with this, and then you could do things like hit the delete key and delete portions of the image out, or I'm Command Zing here. On a PC it would be Control Z to undo what I just did, so that's going to come in handy. Know your keyboard commands, but this, that's one of the more common ones. So Control Z on a PC, Command Z on a Mac will undo whatever you just did. So I could also use the paint bucket tool to fill in that rectangle. Ooh, that's weird. Not sure why it's doing that, but oh, I know why, because I'm not on a new layer. I'm going to undo this. Undo, undo, Command Z. And I'm going to make a new layer here. So I'm going to make an empty layer, and now it should, see, now it fills beautifully. So if you're not familiar with the concept of layers, layers act like, if you think about transparencies on top of one of those like old school projectors, the bottom layer is the background, and as you get further up the ladder of the layers, those layers are on the top. So right now, layer 2 is on top of my background. And the great thing about using layers is it just gives you more flexibility to move stuff around. So now I can take this thing that I just created, this object, and I can move it around. And I can transform it, and it doesn't affect this background layer. Whereas if I had done that on the background layer, I wouldn't be able to move that around or get rid of it very easily. So that is the beauty of layers and why you should use them. It's for that kind of flexibility. Okay, so I'm going to delete this object, and I just deleted the layer along with that. So now I'm back to just having my background layer. So now let's take a look at the lasso select. So there are a few different kinds of lassos, and this is a powerful selection tool. And it works the same way in Pixlr as it does in Photoshop, where you have the magnetic lasso, you have the polygonal lasso, and just the free draw lasso. So with the free draw, you can, make your own selections, and I'm just holding down my mouse, the button on my mouse while I do this. And this is a terrible selection, but that's okay. You'll do a better one when you're practicing. This is just as an example. So I've selected, part of the bridge here. And again, that was like the free draw lasso. And I'm going to Command D that to deselect. On a PC, it would be Control D to deselect. Let's try the polygonal lasso. So this is more of just like a point and click type of thing where you're just pointing and clicking, and this one's a little bit limited in that you can't do curves, so it creates these like weird little points, but it's great, for making custom shapes. So if I wanted to like, do some kind of a custom shape that just required points like this, then that's the tool that you want to use. So once you get your selection made, then you can do all sorts of things. I could, again, just like with the rectangular marquee tool, I could delete that, or I could fill it with a color. Again, I would want to make a new layer before I do that. So I made a new layer and filled it. Great. Okay, and then we have one more type of lasso tool, and that's the magnetic lasso. And the magnetic lasso is pretty cool because it will actually be really smart and follow along the edges of the object that you're trying to outline. So it can be a really helpful tool for making these types of complex selections. All right, so that's the lasso tools in a nutshell. I'm going to Command D that. Then we have the magic wand tool. The magic wand tool is mostly useful for selecting big areas of the same color, which we don't really have in this image. But if I click on an area, you can kind of see how it works. See, I have to be on the right layer to do that, so I'm making sure I go back to my background layer, which is where the photo is. So it's trying to find the same color range here and make that a selection. So that's what the magic wand tool is good for. So if you had a photo with, a big area of one color, then it would be able to make that selection very easily. The crop tool is just to change the size of your image. So all of your crop parameters are at the top here, and you can set them to different sizes, and you can make presets over here. You could make a ratio, or it could be a free transform. So, we can get more into crop settings later, but for now, just know that, that's all available to you up there. The scissor tool is just another one where you can, cut out shapes from your canvas, and I'm not going to get too into that right now. That would be something for a little bit later. The liquefy tool is just going to create that sort of underwater warp look if you drag it across elements in your photo or design. Okay, I'm just going to Command Z, Control Z, all that. The patch tool, if you wanted to make an element disappear out of your photo, so say I wanted to get rid of this sailboat, I could click on it and it tries to sample what's around the object in order to make it disappear. And I could go in and really work on that to make it look a little bit better. It's a little bit blurry down there and took some of the brown from the landscape into the water, but you get the idea. Okay, so now the clone stamp. You can stamp a part of your photo. Let's see. So you can set the size. I want to make it a harder edge, so you can make the edge as soft or as hard as you want. And I'm going to just select part of the bridge. So if I hold down the Shift key, it will go into stamp mode. Whoops. Okay. There we go. Hold down Shift. and then you can like stamp parts of the image in other places. So this is a useful tool if you're trying to, get rid of a certain area on a photo, or you can make it to use fun designs. There's a lot you can do with the stamp tool. You could kind of keep repeating it. Okay. So I'm going to Control, Command Z, all of that. Blur, sharpen is just what it sounds like. So let's get a nice big brush up. And you can see that if I run this over the bridge, it's blurring it quite a bit. If I Command Z that, if I click on sharpen, it will do the opposite, it will sharpen it. So that's a nice tool. Dodge and burn will either darken or lighten. So up here you have the option to either lighten or darken. So, if you've taken a photo and one part of it is too dark, then you can just lighten it up, and vice versa. Let's see how this works. So see how the bridge is getting lighter the more I work it. Okay, and darken it back up. Okay, next is the sponge color. This is pretty neat. You can, again, you're just running a brush over the photo to increase vibrance, saturation, or temperature. So let's look at saturation. Say I want to bring out the colors in the clouds more. I could make a nice big brush and I can up the strength of this and really bring out those colors. So saturation is just, how pumped up are your colors in the photo. All right. Vibrance. So you can really go crazy with these. And temperature. Okay. Pen tool is a little bit different than the paintbrush tool. It's just going to give you different texture basically. But there are all different options. You can have sketchy, you can have plain. So I'll show you what the plain looks like. Okay. Paintbrush tool. And by the way, I'm setting the colors for these tools down here. So you see these little circles down here. The main color is going to be the one in the front. And you just by clicking on it, you can choose your color. So if I wanted to make my paintbrush color white, I would select it there. And again, you can change the size and the hardness of your brush up where these options are. Ooh. You can have a lot of fun with those. Eraser tool, same thing, where you can change your size, you can change the opacity. So opacity means the transparency. If you don't want to erase fully, then you can just erase, a certain percentage through the image. Paint bucket tool, or the fill tool, will fill in certain areas. So if you make a selection, you can fill it using that tool, and I already showed you that, so you know how that works now. Gradient. So you can choose different gradients up here in the options area. So let's say I wanted this gradient, and then you can also add colors, add your own colors to these to make your own gradient. Not going to do that right now, but let's just work with the colors that's there. So if I go ahead, I'm going to actually click on layer, this new layer, so that it doesn't go right over my background. So there's my gradient, and if I want to change the opacity on my layer on this gradient, I would just go over to the three dots on the side here of the layer and click on those, and I'm going to reduce my transparency. Okay. All right, then we have the shape tool, so you can make different shapes in here. I should have put that on a new layer, so I'm going to do that. Oh boy, I am screwing up as I talk to you guys. Let's see. Here we go. There we go. Now I can move that shape around and I can transform it. And I could select this using the magic wand tool. And then I could go back to my background and do things like delete So you can do some fun things with that shape tool. But I'm going to undo all of that. So I'm doing my Command Z to just go back in time. Your text tool. So I'm going to actually, it's a little different than Photoshop where you actually need to create the layer before you type. So you're going to create a new layer and specify that it's a text layer. So there's my text, and you can change the color up here. You can change the font and the size. All right. Cool. Eyedropper tool. Eyedropper tool, you can select any of the colors from your image. So say I want that color and I wanted to, paint with that color. Oops. To make sure I'm not on a text layer to do that. Okay. This is just the magnifying glass is just the zoom tool, but you are better off just using your Command plus, Command minus, or on a PC Control plus and minus to zoom in and out like this. And then the little hand tool is to navigate around your canvas. So if you click and hold, you're going to navigate around your canvas this way using the hand tool, but that also works if you hold your space bar. Then you'll get that hand tool up. So that's the quick way to do it. All right, so those are the basics of Pixlr. There's a lot more that you can do in here, but I just wanted to present you with the basics. Play with it, have fun with it, try making your different layers and see how the different layers interact. Try moving your layer orders around and seeing what that does. And just, get a feel for layers and all of the tools that you have in the toolbar, and we'll go from there. All right. Happy image editing, everyone.